Now, during the pandemic, homemade and shot from home content is getting its 15 minutes of fame. Julia Borsett is here with one Hollywood star cashing in on the new craze. Julia?
That's right. The star is John Krasinski, and he has struck a deal with Viacom CBS to sell Some Good News. That's his homemade show that he's been broadcasting on YouTube for the last 8 weeks. The subscription service CBS All Access will be the first to air the show, which will be produced by Krasinski, but will have a different host. Now, sources tell me that a flood of offers came in from both digital and traditional content platforms. The appeal of the concept, even without Krasinski hosting, speaks to the growing value of content that can be made quickly with a low budget and not a lot of people, and how every streamer and network is facing content delays because of production stoppages. Now, Apple TV also just bought the rights to a podcast that's turning into a limited series starring Paul Rudd and Will Ferrell, and it's also investing in more original podcasts, which could also be turned into TV series. Back over to you.
Julie, I'm surprised this landed with CBS All Access. I would have thought maybe a better fit for Apple TV or something like that. But does that just speak to how much they were willing to pay, and how many subscribers are on that platform these days?
Well, look, I think the one main reason I would say it likely ended up with Viacom CBS is because John Krasinski has an existing relationship with that media giant. You have his movie, The Quiet Place. There's a sequel that's completed. They're going to be releasing that theatrically. That's through that media, through Paramount. And then you also have the fact that he stars in the Jack Ryan show, which airs on Amazon, but it actually is produced by Paramount and by Viacom's production facility. So this is someone who is a big star. He has a relationship with a company already, and this is another way that they're broadening and expanding their relationship with
Got
him.
it. You almost wonder why they had to pay him for it in that case. They could have just said, great, we'll take the show. Let me bring in Ed Lee, Julia, if you'll stick around. He is the media reporter for the New York Times and a CNBC contributor. Ed, I guess the question is this actually telling us that there might be more demand for this kind of homemade content, or do you think once the pandemic is over, people will want to go back to that kind of slickly produced type of scripted series they watched more of in the past?
I think there's always going to be sort of desire for the professionalized content. And, whether it's going to be sports or, big productions like a Game of Thrones, there's at the same time, and what we're seeing here is that, we're finding new forms of content based on, the lockdown that people like. They like sort of the rawness of what Krasinski's done here. I think that it's very sort of intimate and familiar. And yes, that looks kind of like my home. And I think that there's a definite appeal there. There will be a place for it going forward. This deal is a bit of a head scratcher for me, though, I have to say. I mean, I think part of why people are really tuning in is, again, there's nothing else to watch, but there's sort of an ease of access to it, right? It's just there. It's just on the internet. I can sort of tune into it whenever I need to. Once you gate it behind a subscription service, you might bring some people over, but at the same time, you're going to lose a lot of that audience. It's a different kind of a feeling. It's a different kind of sort of friction, I guess.
Well, there's also a huge risk, Ed, in that he's not going to be the host of it. They're going to replace him with somebody else. So we'll see how that goes. Ed, why do people think we need some good news? There's a lot of good news on TV these days. I mean, I don't know where this concept is coming from.
Oh, you just tune into CNBC. I mean, come on, right? Yes. There's plenty of good news, right?
Endless drumbeat.
I mean, it's counter-programming, right? It's kind of brilliant. I also think it speaks to Krasinski's his own sort of personality. I think that's a big part of who he is, and he likes to do that kind of stuff. And I think that's what's authentic around it, right? So ultimately, it's not necessarily even good news or bad news so much as it's authentic. And I think that's always the best of the internet, right? YouTube sort of was founded on this idea of authenticity. And, it's huge and it's big and it has a huge audience. Of course, it's really fractured. So I think Krasinski was smart in terms of, using the format in the right way, in the right venue. But when it comes to sort of more professionalized content, I think the bar gets a little bit higher. There's always room for good news, and there's plenty of good news to be had. It's more a format and sort of a timing thing. I think,
we have big fans of that. Who's my producer, others who say they've been watching the show and they love how he brings his kids into it. But again, Julia, I mean, John Krasinski has huge appeal himself, so replacing him is not going to be an easy task.
Yes, and look, they could replace him with a comedian, as someone who also has a little bit of a following. But I think what we're seeing with a lot of these stars who've been broadcasting from their home is whether it's John Legend doing a concert on Instagram or Miley Cyrus broadcasting what she calls her own talk show from her house. people were creative. They wanted to get out there. They wanted to do something to connect with their fans. This was a great opportunity for Krasinski, not only to entertain himself and uplift his viewers, but really also build his profile, build and secure his fan base. And I think what's going to happen going forward is people will still want to have that feeling of intimacy and connection with these stars. They're also going to want to see the really big budget stuff that's escapist and really different, a la a Game of Thrones, or even a Westworld, talking about these sort of big budget shows which are on HBO. But I think that they will expect more in terms of that connectivity and sense of intimacy that Ed just mentioned when we do get out of this.
Yeah. All right, we'll see if it's a one-off or not. It might even be a one-off with just him. The case remains to be determined. Thank you both today, Ed Lee and Julia Boorstin.